Hello there and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, to L24 News special coverage, this time of the Donald Trump investigation. Donald Trump is under criminal investigation for potential violations of the Espionage Act and additional status, relating to obstruction of justice and destroying federal government records, according to a search warrant executed by FBI agents at the former president's home on Monday. The search warrant, the contents of which were confirmed by a lot of investigators, shows the FBI was seeking evidence about whether the mishandling of classified documents by Trump, including some marked top secret, amounted to violation of 3 criminal status. Most notably, the search warrant authorized by FBI agents to seize material from Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence to investigate crimes in connection with the Espionage Act, which outlaws the unauthorized retention of national security information that could harm the United States or aid an adversary. To this end, multiple questions come to the scene. Why did Trump take classified documents in the first place? Is this ongoing investigation being only an act by rivals and the American government to stop him from participating in the 2024 presidential election? If Trump has been convicted, what price he will be paying? More pressing answers are needed for what the former president intended to do with sensitive information the FBI agents uncovered. And to know these answers, I'm joined live by Mr. Halle Schlanger, Vice President of Cello Institute from Germany, and Mr. alongside Hamoud Salhi, Associate Dean of International Education and Senior International Officer at California State University. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us in this debate. Short break and we will be back. And before we delve into our discussion, let me give you this piece of information and this report. After Trump's house raided by the FBI on Tuesday, outraged Republicans and Trump supporters accused Biden and its administration of weaponizing the feds against former president. However, the White House said Biden was not even notified by the search. Following the search, Donald Trump is believed to breach Espionage Act and put defense information at risk.
The U.S. Department of Justice said the FBI agents removed 11 sets of confidential documents from Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida, some of them considered above top secret. Trump claimed in a statement that the documents seized by agents were all declassified and that he would have turned them over if the Justice Department had asked.
You know, a president can declassify anything. Shouldn't be able to declassify the matters of this seriousness. This isn't declassified. It's just improperly handled. This information, as it is coming across, and we'll know more later, is highly classified, well above top secret.
FBI agents took at least 20 boxes and 30 items, including information about the president of France. The Washington Post had also reported for possible classified materials related to nuclear weapons, which Trump denied the report, writing on his social media account that the nuclear weapons issue is a hoax.
When it comes to classified information, the moment the president leaves office, he's not necessarily going to be possessing a security clearance, and he doesn't have one right now. There is absolutely no reason for a former president or any other former official to have classified information in their personal possession.
The disclosures made by FBI agents based on a search warrant was approved by federal magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhardt, who believed on the possibility that Trump breached the Espionage Act, a federal law that prohibits the possession or transmission of national defense information, which might threaten national security.
I mean, these are felonies, and these are severe felonies. The Espionage Act is what we prosecute spies under. It's what we prosecute leakers under when they leak sensitive and classified information to the media. This is something that the government takes very seriously.
It's worth mentioning that Trump increased the penalties for violating the Espionage Act when he was a president, making it a felony liable to be punished by more than 5 years in prison.
And here we go with our list of the discussion. Mr. Halil, we will starting with you since you are an American. Don't you think it is already a felony and a threat, as the report stated, to the national security of the United States, what Trump has done? I mean, when a top confidential document has been taken once, it could happen again and again. Each next president, if Trump wants to be punished, will do the same. What are you saying about that? And how are they going to deal with this case?
Well, let me start by saying that we don't know for sure yet what was taken. The contents have not been fully revealed. The talk of nuclear weapons and nuclear codes and things of that sort, until that comes out, it's premature to say that he's violated the Espionage Act or that he's committed a felony. These are matters of law that should be determined in court. What's unprecedented is to conduct a raid against a former president, and to do so in circumstances in which the nation is highly polarized around the person of President Donald Trump. According to most polls, he would be a front runner for the presidency in 2024 were he to run again. But in the meantime, we're facing serious crises in the United States, a possible war with Russia that could become a nuclear war, the inflation running close to 10%. The population is highly divided, and an act of this sort, of sending the FBI into the home of a former president, unless they have absolutely ironclad evidence that he committed a felony, has a chilling effect on the debate in the United States. And I think that's a part of it. It shows the fear of the American people that the Justice Department and FBI have to keep them from having the kind of serious debate about policy that's necessary, and instead to divert them once again into the ups and downs of Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. Perfectly understood. Mr. Hamoud Salhi, the strange thing was that the raid process was mainly caused by a violation of rules of confidentiality, and certainly the American investigation authorities will not announce the nature or even the contents of these documents due to the high secrecy. But two names mentioned in these documents were leaked to the American media. The first of them is the French President Emmanuel Macron, and secondly is the Trump's advisor and friend Roger Stone. So what is the main goal behind this leak of this information? Why these two names precisely?
Before we get to that, we have to put this in a perspective. Number one, if any Americans or a foreigner or anybody in the United States who does the same thing what former President Donald Trump did, he would be taken to court. The same process that we've seen happening at this time happens. So from a legal perspective, the FBI, or specifically the Department of Justice, has done its homework. It has reviewed the case, and there were negotiations up to the last minute, as reports have indicated, that the Department of Justice may follow due process, and the meeting they had, the last one I believe was in June. All of this with the understanding that the former President Donald Trump had previously submitted the document, 15 boxes, but then they were told that there were additional boxes, which it turns out there were. So from a legal perspective, this is a case, if it were not a former president or another person like not Trump, we would not be talking about this. The second thing, we have entered into a Trumpian territory, meaning what the Republicans and particularly former President Donald Trump is doing is bringing this case to the public, to make it a political issue. What we've seen is a narrative that constantly focuses on Trump, on his behavior, and that's where the problem is. Now, should the politics overcome or oversight or be the factor in deciding this case, it could be. But from a legal perspective, we are facing a major problem with the former president who, as we know from all the indication and the American law, is allegedly in violation of the law, specifically the espionage case act you talked about. This is found that there are some highly classified documents in the boxes. And second, he's also in violation of what we call the ownership of the materials as a president. The Presidential Records Act passed after the Watergate, which dealt specifically with cases like this, made it clear that all documents belong to the government, and they should be archived under National Archive records. So what we are seeing now is a political debate centered around a narrative that makes, or that we have seen before. It's all Trump and Trump and Trump, and he is the man presented as a victim, and who is sort of, what's very interesting is the American law espionage that passed by former President Donald Trump. It specifically deals with this issue. So to enter into that territory, the Department of Justice must have had enough evidence. Number one is that they have a case in their hand that shows, or document that shows, that the American national interest is at violation. That we've seen by the document that they were recuperated and by the affidavit or the topics or the items that were purchased. The second thing, they must have find serious evidence that crime is committed, not against Trump. We have to make it clear, but a crime happened in the residence of the former president. Thirdly, we have to see or to examine how the media is being portraying this.
Perfect.
Words matters. And from that perspective, the issue of nuclear weapon, the two people that you mentioned are all, we really don't know exactly what happened to them, how they're involved, because it's all speculation. And leaks are there, but leaks are based on what? The boxes are unsealed, and probably until, we never know, until maybe 25, 50 years from now, as the American law dictated. So that's those two variables, Perfect. The legal and the political, are what we should be, what is at stake here. Politically, this is a serious question, and it did bring back Trump. Now we're talking about his elections and all those kind of things about that he's in the headlines.
Quite understood. Derived from the list of my questions and derived from the words of Mr. Hamoud Salhi. Mr. Halli, do you think that, as Mr. Salhi said, that Trump is trying to make it a public matter, this investigation? How this will help Trump if it really could succeed to make it a public matter?
Well, let me just address a couple of points that Hamoud made. Surely you know that Hillary Clinton the FBI found that she destroyed classified documents, which also falls under the Public Records Act, but she was never raided. She was never prosecuted for it. So that's one point. Secondly, the FBI has very often in the Trump case cited evidence which turned out to be completely false, including an affidavit submitted to courts, especially the FISA court. Now, I'm not here to defend Donald Trump and his presidency or his potential presidential campaign. I'm here to make a point that the Department of Justice, and especially the permanent bureaucracy of the Department of Justice, has a recent history of violating due process, including using the Christopher Steele report, which the FBI knew at the time was false, to get warrants to investigate Carter Page, a Trump supporter. And so when you have something like that in the background, you have to at least raise the question of the political over the legal question. And why would there be a political desire to sideline Trump? Well, it's obvious. The Biden administration is failing. Now, the fact that Trump will make this a political issue, everyone knew that would happen. And his supporters are very much aware of the fact that he was a target of illegal activity against him by the FBI and the CIA during the whole of Russiagate.
Perfectly
so
understood.
I think it's somewhat naive to say there's a legal point here.
Mr. Hawley, I'm sorry to cut your train of thought, but since you have mentioned Hillary Clinton, I will add this point for you. Jennifer Pellemary, former assistant to Hillary Clinton, explained the reason for the existence of this file, which contains highly classified information about Macron. She said that this is a sensitive information in the file about Macron could be used by a world leader at odds with Macron against him, implying that this world leader is the Russian President Vladimir Putin. So how can you explain, Mr. Hawley, this statement by an ex-rival Clinton assistant? Don't you think they are trying very hard to unleash all the rage comes out of the 2016 election sudden defeat, that it says a Russian hand was playing over the polls?
Well, that was exactly my point, that there was a partisan attack, which was not really partisan. It was the permanent bureaucracy of the government, including the intelligence community and the Justice Department, to try to undermine the Trump administration. And what was the issue? It was Trump's desire to have friendly relations with Russia. And instead of letting that happen, they accused him of being a Putin puppet who was put in office by Vladimir Putin. Now, I would argue that the current crisis in Ukraine is a result of the Russiagate attacks on Donald Trump, so that he was never comfortable in following up his desire to establish friendly relations with Russia. So when the Clinton people speak out, you know it's partisan, but as I'm saying, this goes beyond partisanship. It goes toward the whole question of who controls the narrative in the politics of the United States. And in recent years, that's been done by the mainstream media and by the networks connected to what's sometimes called the military-industrial complex, which is more than happy to have one war after another. And while Trump didn't do everything he promised to stop the wars, he made it clear he did not want the United States involved in any more wars. And that made him an enemy of those people whose livelihood and fortunes depended on getting government funds to go into Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, and now Ukraine.
Very good points you have raised. Coming to you, Mr. Hamoud Salhi, the reasons the Federal Bureau of Investigation searched Donald Trump's Palm Beach residence last week is because the 45th president is under investigation for pocketing classified documents related to nuclear weapons and possibly violating the Espionage Act. So, to this point, Mr. Hamoud Salhi, how could they know one of those documents related to a nuclear matter? Don't you think there is a link with what is happening around the globe right now, in Ukraine precisely, where UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres kept warning recently all the world leaders to stay away of a nuclear use?
There are a couple of things. And again, we enter into the same territory as we have seen. Let's examine the facts. The fact there is a law, or allegedly a law is being broken. The fact that former President Donald Trump took stuff that belongs to the government as per the American law is a serious, at least a crime to consider, to look at. The second thing is that, as we have seen in the previous times, Hillary again comes back to the front line. What we forget to say is that there was a process there that was followed, and the FBI director at the time decided not to press charges. The third thing is that we're again entering into a political area that is driven by Trump narrative, because unlike what Mr. Holloway is saying, the narrative has been a Trump narrative. The Democrats are absent. The left, or so-called left, is absent. The Department of Justice has yet to mention anything. That brings me to your question, which is, the leaks about what's happening. Nothing so far suggests that there are people who know about what the content of this. So it brings headlines, it brings issues into the forefront. The nuclear issue is a very, very sensitive issue, and it was brought up with the idea that somebody told somebody, and it was reported. The fact is, we don't know if that's the case. If we try to analyze it in the bigger picture, yes, this fits into the narrative that there is a nuclear threat. And as we have seen from Mr. Holloway, this is again focusing on the issue that are important to the American public, but from a legal perspective, they are far away. And as I said earlier, if this was an American citizen, a citizen of not the stature of Donald Trump, not any president, Donald Trump, if this was Barack Obama, if this was President Clinton, former President Clinton, or any other, we would not have seen this kind of responses. It got to this response because President Donald Trump always does. This is part of his personality. And you ask the question, why does he take this document? That begs the question. Some reports are saying, well, he did it for money. Some saying that they did it for personal. Others say it's a personal patterns. But the idea of having documents away from where they should be, in a private place of a president, which is puzzling and should be of concern. So the political debate should be not the issue here. The context, the legal context is what is important. So from that perspective, the narrative does fit in this idea that the world is in danger, and we should give former President Donald Trump a break, and that he is a victim. But we have seen all of this before. This is the kind of narrative that we've seen. And again, as Mr. Holloway, we are looking at this from an outside perspective. I have no affiliation with whatsoever, but the facts, when you look at it, and from an objective perspective, this is a matter that is becoming, looked at the public, because it connects very, very well to the impact, the consequences, if President Trump found guilty of this. And it's if. What the Department of Justice had is to, in order to do the search, had to find a probable cause, meaning that there are evidence, or they believe that there are evidence in the residence of former President Donald Trump that is serious, and they need to retrieve it. And connected to that, there is the intent of the President Donald Trump. The government, the FBI in particular, and the Department of Justice have been in negotiation with Donald Trump for months. And it is clear that he has not allegedly followed the process. It's the same law that the former president preaches to adopt is now against him, and I've seen this as a pattern. So from a lot of perspective, this case is being looked at being politicized for reasons that support Donald Trump more than the American public or the American national interest, for that matter. And bringing the nuclear issue add to that important that we need to shift our focus away from a violation or allegedly violation of law to other more important national security issues. But again, nobody knows what's in this document.
Now let's try to tackle another report, also based on Donald Trump. Former U.S. President Donald Trump said on Wednesday he refused to answer questions during an appearance before New York State's Attorney General and a civil investigation into his family's business practices, citing his constitutional right against self-incrimination.
This is the greatest witch hunt in the history of our country. This is how U.S. former President Donald Trump described New York State probe into his business dealings on Wednesday. Trump refused to answer questions during a testimony before New York Attorney General Letitia James, who is investigating the Trump Organization's business practices.
Now that the discovery phase is concluding, the parties are going to line up their experts and get ready for trial. Again, Trump has tried to stop the civil lawsuit at every step. He's lost at the New York appellate courts time and time again. So now that he's been unable to get the case dismissed, I don't see settlement happening here for both legal and political reasons. So
the New York civil investigation involves allegations that Trump's company, the Trump Organization, misstated the value of prized assets like golf courses and skyscrapers, misleading lenders and tax authorities.
It's an important case, and the reason is that allegations are that Trump and his businesses submitted false documents in support of bank loans. That's a felony, but it could also be a civil fraud claim, and we're dealing with the latter here.
Trump, who is expected to run for the 2024 presidential election, emailed a statement saying he wouldn't answer any question, recalling his constitutional right against self-incrimination and accusing the Democratic Attorney General of openly campaigning on a policy of destroying him.
I decline to answer the questions under the rights and privileges afforded to every citizen under the United States Constitution.
According to his lawyer, Trump answered one question, his name, during a 4-hour session. Jurors could take his silence into account, which may lead to a trial. Trump's testimony comes amid his continuous legal problems surrounding him, which came right after the raid of FBI agents into his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida.
Mr. Hal Lee, Alan Lichtman, a professor of history at American University, he said, as a warning statement, if you think the 2016 and 2020 presidential campaigns were abhorrent, you haven't seen anything yet, which means he's talking about the coming election in 2024, where Trump is looking to take part on it again. And what is happening now to his reputation is just to destroy his chances to go back. Don't you think so?
Well, I think it's definitely the case that there's an attack on Donald Trump as a person and as a former president. But I think one has to look at this thing from the standpoint of the other aspect of the U.S. Judicial system, which is someone is innocent until proven guilty. The FBI and the Justice Department have a lot of work to do if they're going to be able to prove that he engaged in felonious actions. But when you look at the U.S. media, most of the media which opposed Trump during his presidency, and I'm talking about the mainstream media, who opposed his attempts to form better relations with President Putin and so on, they've already convicted him, whereas Trump's supporters have already convicted the FBI and Justice Department of criminal action. Now, I would argue that it's clear that the FBI and the Justice Department did engage in what should have been criminal action against Trump as president, including using documents which they knew were false to apply for warrants. So that's why there should be some skepticism when it comes to the Justice Department and FBI moves against Trump, and see it more as a political action, not necessarily blaming Biden for it, but the permanent bureaucracy that is known to carry out such actions, including against my former boss, Lyndon LaRouche, who is unfairly convicted based on a long-time Justice Department witch hunt, which was conducted through the media. So, the politics and legal side are entwined. You can't escape that. And I think the Justice Department knew that when they launched this. And so we're going to see what I think that comment about you ain't seen nothing yet. If you look back at 2016 and 2020, Trump will fight, his supporters will fight, and his opponents will fight. And it's going to be messy. And what will be lost in the process? An honest, open debate about what must be done to bring the United States out of an economic crisis and out of a potentially devastating war. You talk about the nuclear threat. Look at the Zelensky forces shelling the nuclear plant at Zaporizhia, which is a crime against humanity. Where's the Western leaders talking about that, speaking out against that? Where's the media speaking out against that? Instead, they're taking out hypothetical positions against Donald Trump on so-called nuclear secrets. So I find a lot of hypocrisy in this. Let the legal process play out, but it should play out fairly and justly and not through the media.
Understood. A very good point you have raised and derived from your words. Mr. Hamoud Salhi, if this case goes down and nothing could be used against Trump, and there is the American midterm election coming in November, and let us assume the Republicans make it through, don't you think they will retaliate for what is happening? After all, Trump is a Republican and he will always represent Republicans.
You see, what we are witnessing in the American system is a huge shift in the narrative, the discourse, the demographics in both the Republican and the Democratic Party. The kind of analysis that I'm hearing from Holloway fits very well in this idea that the government institutions are corrupt up to the point where they don't serve our interest. A case in point, President Donald Trump has on many occasions supported acts against, and he has the most restricted passed a law or an act or a law in that case that put restrictions on espionage. But when it doesn't suit their interest or the interest of the extremists or what you call the Republicans in general at these days, then it's not fair game. The process that we've seen so far fits into very well the elections of the congressional elections that are coming up in November, and also the 2024 elections. Now, let's follow this argument about bringing back Donald Trump to the court and follow this process. There are three scenarios that could come out of this, and they will all have an effect on the future of President Donald Trump and for the country on this matter. The first scenario is most likely the Department of Justice would say, I got what I want, and the case is closed. We've seen this with Hillary Clinton, where the FBI director decided not to move forward and the case. This will end the political debate, but it doesn't end the attack and using this, what happened in favor of President Donald Trump. The second thing is to indict the president or whoever is responsible with this, just as they did previously with Sandy Berger and others who were accused of taking classified materials from materials. The third scenario is halfway measure would be some kind of punishment with the implication that lesson learned and things like that. But the bottom line, this is about the future of Donald Trump, his political career. If he's indicted, his political career is over, and he'll be barred from public office. If he doesn't, if he's not indicted, and then it is up to the Republican Party to rally. They will rally behind him. President Donald Trump is a money machine. He has raised millions and millions of dollars on cases like this. So those are the facts that we need to look at. And as someone who away and examine and looking at the American sort of what's happening on the American scene to Algerians and to others, this is unprecedented. Because on the one hand, you tell us the law is above everybody, but then here is this person, and he's a legitimized institution that takes this action. It is being attacked, but it is what makes the American politics interesting, and in many ways, it allows for everyone to express their views despite where they're coming from. So the politics is what determines this debate. This is why Donald Trump, and again, Mr. Holloway keeps saying the mainstream media. Well, that includes Fox. The mainstream media is divided along the lines between, a Fox News that supports unconditionally Donald Trump and others. We shifted in the political narrative, and this is what is causing the American public. And all the bottom line, the last point in this is that we see the demographics, the political parties, the Republican is under the thumb of Trump. The idea of being behind a master, someone who is mastering public relations, it has a lot of advantages, as we've seen in these elections, and most likely today, not supporting him will cost people election, as we have seen. The second thing, the Democratic Party is also under severe changes. There is a split between the progressive, radical, if you want, those who want the party to shift to social justice, to address the issues that matter to the youth, and the establishment, which seems to be conservative. These are the shifts that are happening in American politics. And add to that the phenomena of Trump that has controlled the waves. And today, there is not a single day when you don't hear something about Donald Trump, while the other side has yet to be heard.
Really understood. Now, a last point to be discussed. I don't know if we do have enough time. The Justice Department has asked the court to unseal the warrant that the FBI received before searching the Florida estate of former President Donald Trump. Attorney General Merrick Garland said Thursday, acknowledging the extraordinary public interest in the case. The request was striking because such documents traditionally remain sealed during a pending investigation.
Since I became Attorney General, I have made clear that the Department of Justice will speak through its court filings and its work. Just now, the Justice Department has filed a motion in the Southern District of Florida to unseal a search warrant and property receipt relating to a court-approved search that the FBI conducted earlier this week. That search was of premises located in Florida belonging to the former president. The department did not make any public statements on the day of the search. The former president publicly confirmed the search that evening, as is his right. Copies of both the warrant and the FBI property receipt were provided on the day of the search to the former president's counsel, who was on site during the search. Faithful adherence to the rule of law is the bedrock principle of the Justice Department and of our democracy. Upholding the rule of law means applying the law evenly, without fear or favor. Under my watch, that is precisely what the Justice Department is doing.
Mr. Hawley, after the raid, Trump issued a statement saying that his home in Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, was besieged and raided by a large group of FBI agents. Republican leader McCarthy accused the FBI and Department of Justice, saying that it is an armed politicization. Now, Republican Senator Ted Cruz said that the FBI had become a dog attacker to help Democrats, while Republican Congressman Paul Gosar said that we must destroy FBI. I mean, don't you think what is happening now in U.S. is a radical change? Why and how could Donald Trump make this in his favor? How he can challenge the FBI, that is considered world #1 investigation bureau?
Well, as I pointed out earlier, the FBI was caught in numerous lies in Russiagate. A number of FBI agents were discredited, including the former acting director. So we're dealing with a bigger question, which Professor Hamoud brought up, which is the belief that the U.S. government institutions have become corrupt. Let me point out a couple of examples. President George W. Bush was never brought up for charges for lying to get the United States into a war with Iraq, which amounted to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of casualties, tremendous damage to the United States' reputation. President Obama never faced serious criticism for the operation that was done in Libya, which destroyed that country and opened up the possibility for slave markets to return there. The current situation in Ukraine, where billions of dollars are going to provide weapons to fight a war against Russia as a proxy war. These are examples of corruption, where establishment figures in the United States get away with things. So why should Trump not figure if in fact he did something wrong, that he couldn't get away with it? I think the idea of the rule of law, which everyone tosses around, such as Secretary of State Blinken, who talks about the rules-based order. What kind of rules-based order is it when the United States imposes its rules on other countries and takes away their sovereignty? We're seeing a shift going on in the world right now with new institutions coming into being like the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. I think the United States is going to be facing a real transformation, hopefully not a violent one. But I think the actions such as those taken by the Justice Department, if they don't have the evidence to back up what they're saying, will play into the hands of those who wish to carry out violence against the United States.
Mr. Haldi Schlange from Germany, Mr. Hamoud Salhi from USA, thank you ever so much for taking part with us in this debate. Unfortunately, we have a limited time, so we've reached the end. Republican lawmakers threatens to investigate FBI actions, and this title, it seems the next round of battle has been revealed. Mr. Haldi, Mr. Hamoud Salhi, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Bye-bye.